When you talk about retro game or any kind of art form for that matter, there's usually a ratio between the respect of what was brought to the table and the quality of said work. Well, it just so happens that today's game is the perfect one to discuss such a matter with the real Final Fantasy II. Quick note here, Final Fantasy is my top 3 favorite franchises of all time, okay? I absolutely love it, but every single series has its ups and downs. I say this because even though I try to stay positive in my reviews, well, let's just say that after this one, it gets much better. Also, you will notice a few slowdowns and jaggies in the footage used. This is because of emulation and recording problems. When you play the actual cartridge on a genuine console, it runs as smooth as butter. So to get back on track, let's just say that the first Final Fantasy was a great success for Square in Japan, and the first order of business was of course to make a second one. But as most companies would simply make a direct sequel with the same gameplay and just toss it on the market, Hironobu Sakaguchi decided instead to go the other way around. Still an RPG on the Famicom with very similar graphics, let's be honest, but as the ending of the first game left very little room for a sequel, might as well make a brand new world with new characters and brand new systems in place. Let's also make a complete 180-degree shift in tone and be more focused on story. The game he created was seemingly heavily inspired by the saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," and was released almost a year after Final Fantasy I, only in Japan. Work was being done on a Western version, but it was cancelled. And no, very sadly this one doesn't involve Cecil and his space whale, that's Final Fantasy IV. As Final Fantasy I was all about adventure, discovery, and saving a bunch of magic rocks, and the world while you're at it, Final Fantasy II is about war, destruction, death, and all the tragedy that unfolds with it. And it's not beating around the bush about it. Some evil man, aptly called the Emperor, makes a literal deal with the devil to summon the forces of hell and take over the world. His first target is Finn, where we meet our heroes, who get slaughtered.
Oh no!
So that was Final Fantasy II. As you can see, great emphasis on story, but oh, it's not over, okay. Yeah, of course, our heroes named Firion, Maria and Guy get saved by the remnants of Finn's forces, who formed the resistance in the town of Altair. But Maria's brother, Leon, has disappeared. Of course, they join the resistance, and under Princess Hilda's orders, they will try to thwart Emperor Bob's plans at every turn. So here Sakaguchi tried to make a slightly more realistic game. Instead of 4 predestined heroes, you have distant characters, although they don't have much in terms of personality yet. Firion is the hero with a capital H, Maria is the girl, and Guy, Talk Beaver. Our trio joins an army to basically fight a war. And I'm not using the word lightly here. Allies who join you can die. Towns get attacked and outright destroyed over the course of the story. Seriously, you can't even get in anymore. And to make sure you're paying attention, characters will teach you keywords you will need to learn and ask other characters to advance the plot forward. It's used in a pretty basic way, all things considered, but it's a pretty neat idea. If you ask the wrong keyword at the wrong time, they will just look at you strangely saying, "Huh?" It even happens to keywords they themselves taught you, by the way. They also tried to reflect this realism in the gameplay. For instance, in your inventory, instead of carrying packs of 15 potions for example, each potion takes an individual slot, so a potion takes the same room as a canoe in your backpack. That's true for the original and the PS1 versions, but we'll come back to version differences later. But largely this kind of realism is mostly reflected in the leveling system, or its lack thereof. In Final Fantasy I, each character had a job class. Only a knight could equip armors or the strongest swords. Only black mages could cast black magic, etc. Here, that's not the case. Any character can equip any weapon or magic. But there is a big caveat to this we'll see later. You see, in most JRPGs, after battle you gain EXP. And after a while, your characters gain a level which boosts a variety of stats, like a package gift if you will. Not so in this game. Here, your characters grow stronger entirely depending on their actions. If you do a ton of physical attacks in a fight, your strength might go up, but your magic won't. If you want your black or white magic to grow, you have to cast a lot of spells, and both separately. Get hit a lot in a fight, and your defense and evasion might go up. Lose tons of hit points or magic points for each of them for a possibility of them to go up. Not the very conditional term I used, as it still might not go up. Same goes for each individual weapon type and magic spell. They all grow stronger as you use them. You want Guy to specialize only in white magic and nothing else? Go for it. You want Mario to be an axe-wielding brute? Nothing is stopping you. Should you equip a sword or an axe? Well, go for both. When you think about it, it's an interesting idea. Why would your magic skills grow when you keep attacking with a sword? As you cast a spell, this gauge fills up. At the end, the spell gains a level, up to 16. Same thing with every weapon type. The more your weapon skills level up, the more hits you do when you attack with it.
And yeah, said like that, these are all great concepts. Even the story has a few cool set pieces, and Emperor Johnny is certainly underappreciated.
Okay, look, small spoilers for a game I ultimately don't recommend, alright? But he kidnaps the leader of the resistance and gives her away as a prize in a Coliseum. The dude has a floating castle inside a tornado, and he is hands down the best villain of the NES trilogy. I will keep how he ends up as a surprise for those who want to find out, but it's actually pretty epic.
And for a game of its time, it has a lot of great stuff. I want to love this game, but how shall I put this? It's boring.
For starters, the stat growth is extremely slow. It grows better when you fight higher ranked monsters, and even so, it takes dozens of spell castings for a single level up, which makes it a bit stronger. And by the way, in the original versions, if you don't cast magic, your intelligence stats might actually go down. And yes, seeing as you never know how stronger monsters will beat you up, the best way to boost your stats is to go fight weak enemies and have your characters beat themselves up, leaving more than a few puzzled enemies in the process.
Man, something weird happened today. Me and my boys were hunting some wannabe adventurers in the forests, and we set up an ambush. Then we attacked those 3 guys and they tore us to shreds. It was awful.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
It happens. It's okay. But then I was the only one left, and instead of just finishing me off, they just went and started pounding each other.
What? Did you confuse them, or did one of them say Nickelback was the best band ever or something?
No, it seems they knew exactly what they were doing, and they were fine with it.
Man, that's weird. So what'd you do?
Well, I just left. Man, I don't want to get involved, you know.
Okay, basically the game seems split into 2 parts for me. At the start of the game, Princess Hilda sends you from town to town. You slowly but surely boost your stats, mostly your strength and weapon skills, because who doesn't just attack in random battles? Also, it's quite rare for the time, but this world map is refreshingly completely open. But if you stray too far in your exploration, you get destroyed. So yeah, don't go exploring this big open world map. Go from point A to point B with little detour. So you do missions, you make allies, you lose allies, and along the way you will meet an in-ship engineer who offers a taxi service. A few Final Fantasy fans already understood what I'm talking about, that this is the very first appearance in the series of Sid. Speaking of Final Fantasy staples in the transportation business, you might stumble in a forest with wild chocobos to ride, with a theme song that just begs to be more than 10 seconds long and okay, that's better. So anyway, all things considered, things are pretty standard until you get to the first dungeon and its first boss. You will notice that your attacks do little damage, except when you cast magic spells. Well, there's not much of an issue yet, I get that. But to boost your magic, you need to use it, okay? The more magic spell levels up, the more MP it costs, which runs out faster and faster. Which is okay, since this is how you boost your maximum MP. Now that I've explained the mechanics, what's the problem? The problem is that you can't use a dedicated mage in a dungeon properly, as they will run out of MP pretty quickly, and eaters, new items that replenish MP, require a mortgage to be bought at the start of the game, which ultimately means you absolutely need to grind magic close to a town with an inn. And don't forget that black and white magics use different stats. And also, when you heal outside of battles, the white magic stat doesn't increase. Speaking of which, spells like Life and Asuna to heal your status ailments need to be leveled up a lot to actually be useful. Even farther into the game, when you get powerful spells like Flare and Holy, they need grinding to actually be worth something. And even then, your characters can deal much more damage physically at this point.
But all of this, it's the system. You get used to it and you work around it. You can work with it. And actually, if you play the GBA or the PSP version as I did, it's actually polished compared to the original and the PlayStation version. What was not changed, however, is the dungeon design.
So as I said, around the moment you really get the hang of the game, you also get the Berserk spell, which just skyrockets your attack power and makes any other spell obsolete. And yes, at the same time, dungeons become more and more complex, and as you down the big dreadnought, the rest of the dungeons get downright obnoxious. Long passages leading to a dead end, or a chest with a potion, sometimes after going up or down a few stairs. Labyrinths in which it's easy to lose your way, all with a really high encounter rate, and the doors. About 9 doors out of 10 lead to these empty rooms with usually 1 or 2 harder battles. You also get to these spots here with 3 or 4 doors with empty rooms. Except for the right one. Seriously, the best analogy was already said by Pro Jared, but it feels like a Christmas gift from that annoying uncle who thinks he's really funny by giving you a box within a box within a box. Except it's just a pair of socks in this one. And when you get to the quest line to get the pretty useless Ultima spell, which has a lot of dungeons one right after the other, you notice that this uncle is looking at you with an evil grin as he brought you 10 more gifts. Usually when I was playing it felt something like this.
Man, I've been in this dungeon for what, 2 hours? 40 minutes?!
The remakes also added a run button. Don't use it in dungeons as it will just make the encounter rate even worse. Keep the slower pace for your own sanity. Let's also not forget that as an NES game, the difficulty is downright schizophrenic. You just survived the really hard boss battle in a chest? Well, tough luck, in the next dungeon you will fight 2 of them at once in a random battle. Thing is, I've been complaining for a while now, but this game did bring a lot to the franchise, which are important to note. As mentioned, it's the first game to be really story driven and to take itself a bit more seriously. Sid and the Chocobos make their appearance, the giant sea monster Leviathan makes its first appearance as a pretty cool dungeon, a lot of monsters like Bomb, Marlboros and Behemoths make their grand entrance. Monsters and your characters, if you want, can be placed in 2 rows, in which monsters in the back are protected by the front row. It also has a few cool story bits, like saving the life of the last wyvern, who later comes to help you. And isn't it Tchaikovsky music playing? The final dungeon of Pandemonium also has a great design and an awesome theme. But still, I'm sure most of you watching this video will not have played this game. Keep that having of not playing Final Fantasy II, it's good for you. Remake wise, the staff did a great job. The spells and weapon skills and your stats do level up faster than in the original. The remix soundtrack supervised by Uematsu himself sounds as great as ever, with more melancholic and militaristic sounding themes at the right times. They knew the game they had in their hands needed a lot of polish, and they did their job well, and they should deserve some credit for that. In the Game Boy Advance version they also added Soul of Rebirth, a brand new quest when you finish the game with characters you've met along your journey.
Thank you.
The quest starts you at the bottom of a dungeon and okay, it just destroys your face at every turn. You can actually save anywhere in this version, and you better do it after every single fight. Most characters are roughly the same as when you last used them in the main quest, including the equipment, so don't strip them naked before losing them in the main game, as the monsters here are very strong. If you didn't level these guys up at all, going through this cave is about as fun as peeling a cactus barehanded. You have a town at the end of this cave with another dungeon, and what awaits is grinding. To give you an idea, at the start you're about as strong as in the middle of the quest, and the final boss here is about as strong as the final boss of the main game. Some story is added to add a bit of cream on this pizza flavored cake, but in my opinion it doesn't add enough to be worth it. It's mostly filler content with tons of grinding and recycled maps for 5 to 6 hours. Versions wise, know that the original has tons of bugs that can be exploited to make your life easier, like simply selecting magic in the menu to make it stronger, and bosses that don't have immunity to death or frog, for example. The PlayStation version keeps some of them, but on the GBA these bugs are corrected. But character growth is smoother, and there is a bonus quest as mentioned. But you know, people who have the PlayStation and GBA remakes usually have it because they are stuck with it as they wanted a remake of the first game. If you want it on PSP or on your phone, you have to actually buy the game. It has better graphics and another new side quest, so technically it's the better version, but it has more gameplay, you know. Another reason why this might be the worst mainline Final Fantasy statistically speaking is that in all of the top X lists and in all the forums that I've seen online, for all the differences of opinion the series has, this is the only game I've never seen someone saying this is the best game in the series. Well, except on GameFAQs Final Fantasy II board. But well, as I said, Square did apply the mechanics of the game in real life, and after this misstep, the series will get much better from here on. Meanwhile though, Final Fantasy II goes at the bottom of the well, with an anvil.
So tell me in the comments what was your worst Final Fantasy and... Oh. Oh, okay then. See you next time.